We have started the mission in the air, with the autopilot enabled, but please increase the throttle lever to maintain a speed between 0.65 to 0.75 Mach. The drones that you will intercept are flying in front of you, at an altitude around 6,000 meters. As we already learned on the prior mission 13, about employing the Rb05 on air-to-ground attacks, the Rb05 is an early multi-purpose missile, which can be used against large ground fixed targets, ships, and also against non-maneuvering aircrafts. If you haven't done mission 13 yet, we suggest to fly it first and return later to this training, as it provides information that we won't be repeating here, like the Rb05 technical details and the DCS control bindings that it uses. On this mission, we will learn how to employ the Rb05 on air-to-air interceptions. Before a successful interception can be done, you need to locate the enemy aircrafts using the PS-37 radar. While the Viggens radar is a ground mapping unit designed mainly for air-to-surface attacks and terrain-following navigation, it can also be used to detect aerial targets. We already learnt the basics of using the radar during mission M11, about using the gun pods for air-to-air interceptions, so it is a good idea to do that mission first as it provides more in-depth information about the radar. Press spacebar to begin the training, or backspace if you prefer to exit in order to fly those other training missions first. While the PS-37 radar fitted to the Viggen is mainly a ground mapping radar, designed for targeting ships, it can also be used to detect aircraft. This radar does not lock a target, as can be seen on other radar types, but allows the pilot to identify terrain features and potential targets. The radar display is unfiltered and the pilot needs to properly interpret the radar image. In addition to the search mode, the radar can also operate in a ranging mode when attacking close targets, to increase accuracy of the sighting solution. Press spacebar to continue. 1. Master Mode Selector. For air-to-air use, set it to nav initially and change to ANF once you are within 15 kilometers of the target. 2. Radar Mode Selector, set it to its A1 position, for a wide search mode with Sector Plan Polar Indicator Display, PPI. Good, the radar display is now active and in wide search mode, covering 61.5 degrees to the left and right of the aircraft nose. The vertical search area is only 3.6 degrees, as shown on the diagram. You can adjust the radar display scale using the radar skin range selector, from a maximum of 120 kilometers, down to 60, 30, and 15 kilometers. Press spacebar to continue. The air-to-air mode of the radar is essentially the ground mapping radar but elevated upward. As such, it is unable to display targets as specific symbols, but merely radar returns in an unfiltered form. The air-to-air mode of the radar is automatically enabled when the pilot selects any of the air-to-air weapons. ACAN jacked, 4 gun pods. Luft, 4 Rb05 missiles in air-to-air mode. IRRB, 4 infrared missiles. For this mission, turn the weapon selector to the Luft position. The elevation of the radar antenna is 1.5 degrees in air-to-air mode, and can be manually adjusted up to 10 degrees using the radar elevation knob. On the air-to-air mode, an antenna elevation indicator is added to the top part of the radar scope, showing the elevation of the radar beam relative to the 1.5 degree center. Press spacebar to continue. When using the radar to detect aerial targets, it is best to increase the display contrast by using the log-lin switch, set it to linear. As aircraft targets can be small, increase the MKR radar gain to its maximum. Adjust the radar screen brightness if needed. Press spacebar to continue. The most important radar adjustment, for the air-to-air roll, is to adjust the radar antenna elevation. Turn the elevation knob to increase the elevation up to a point where the ground returns can be barely seen. If the targets are within the radar detection range, and the elevation is a match for the target's altitude, then the target contacts will be seen as faint black dots, as shown on the picture. The Viggen radar antenna is not stabilized, meaning that if you go nose up or nose down, the radar search pattern will raise or lower, which might result on losing any radar contacts that you had. Press spacebar to continue. The target drones are ahead of you. Set the radar display range to 120 kilometers and continue to fly straight and level, adjusting the radar elevation until you detect at least one of the targets. We are still a bit far from them, so it might take a while to get a successful detection. Reduce the radar display range to 60 kilometers and continue to fly straight and level, adjusting the radar elevation until you detect at least one of the targets. Once a target is detected, turn the aircraft towards the nearest target and increase your speed if necessary, to close range with the target until you are at least within 10 kilometers of it. While the Rb05 missile can be used in an air-to-air engagement, it will perform very poorly against any form of maneuvering target and can only really be used against big aircrafts or helicopters. Never fire it while your aircraft is pulling G. You must be on steady flight, and engaging the autopilot will let you focus on manually steering the missile. Missile guidance and firing procedure is very similar to its air-to-ground use, except that for air-to-air the missile employs a proximity fuse which will detonate its warhead when the missile gets within 6 meters of its target. The HUD symbology only serves as a method to estimate range and will not affect the guidance of the missile. The missile can be fired with, or without, the use of the radar for ranging. If not using the radar, the optical wingspan markers can be used for ranging. The recommended firing range is 2,800 meters, but effective range is highly dependent on the relative airspeed between the attacking and target aircrafts. The real Viggen can carry just 2 of these Rb05 missiles, but, since the manual guidance employed by the Rb05 is hard to master, we have provided unlimited ammunition. So, on this mission you can perform as many missile interceptions as needed to achieve proficiency. The Rb05 missile controller is on the right side console. It's basically a hand grip, with a small thumb and index finger joystick. The stick was actually an analog force transducer stick, with just a little play. On the real Rb05, the control surfaces were powered by a small supply of compressed gas, which only allowed for a limited number of control inputs. You had to steer the missile on a trajectory towards the target, without overcorrecting too much, before the missile became uncontrollable. The original version of the Viggen for DCS had only a small set of commands to guide the Rb05. Later updates added bindings for both faster and slower controls rates when the binded control was held down, plus a set of diagonal control bindings that can be used with an 8-way joystick hat. You should try which set of controls adapts best to your hardware. On my case, I find that the original commands work best for me, on a 4-way hat. Using the flight stick to control the missile felt unrealistic to me, so I don't use those commands. Real Viggen pilots used to pulse the controller, giving short steering commands and wait a bit for the result, and this technique seems to work well on DCS too. So, give short control inputs, do not hold the stick in one direction for long, to avoid overcorrections which would waste the limited controllability of the missile. The Rb05 checklist for its air-to-air use is the following. 1. Weapon selector. Confirm that Luft is selected. 2. Optical sight selector. Enter the target aircraft wingspan. For this mission, set it to 30 meters. 3. Radar mode. Confirm it is at A1 or A2 to have radar ranging available. 4. Master mode. Set to A and F. Although the Rb05 can also be fired in mode nav. 5. Steer the aircraft towards the tail of the target aircraft and get within 10 kilometers behind it. 6. Once within 10 kilometers range, attempt to lock the target by pulling the radar fixed trigger to its first detent, T1. Do it now. The main radar display will go black when the radar is being used for ranging. This is normal. The figure shows the HUD symbology when you are still out of radar ranging distance. Do not steer the aircraft towards the dot symbology, just keep flying straight and level towards the target 6. Check your speed, to prevent an excessive closure speed with the target. Once the radar is able to lock the target, at 7 or 8 kilometers, the HUD symbology will change and show a distance line, as seen on the figure. 7. Engage autopilot on modes ATT or HOD, if desired. On a well-trimmed aircraft it might be unnecessary. Eight. A rescaling of the distance line, from 8 to 4 kilometers, occurs when at 4 kilometers distance. Nine. Trigger lock, set to unsafe once you are within the 2.8 kilometer marks. 10. Fire the missile, do not wait, as the missile circuits are active for just 40 seconds. 11. Guide the missile to the target, attempt to superimpose the flare over the target and keep it there. 12. After impact, trigger to safe, the next missile is automatically selected. Very good, you have destroyed your first target. See if you can destroy another, use your radar to search for it if needed. Press spacebar to continue the training, or backspace to end the mission at this point. Excellent, you have just destroyed your second target. Try to kill the last one. Press spacebar to continue the training, or backspace to end the mission at this point. Great results, you have destroyed the last remaining target. Press spacebar to finish the training. Congratulations, you have successfully completed this training mission. Press spacebar to exit.